They rejected her from military academy 10 years ago, called her weak, unfit, not soldier material. But when Colonel Harrison's unit was trapped behind enemy lines with no way out, the voice that came through their radio belonged to someone he never expected to hear again. The woman he had personally rejected was now leading the only team capable of bringing them home alive. Welcome to those who left a trace. Before we dive into this incredible story of redemption and justice, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from today. And if stories like this one move you, hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything to this community. The morning Nova Chen walked through the gates of West Point Military Academy for her entrance interview, she carried more than just her application folder. She carried the weight of 3 generations of military service, the expectations of a family that had bled for this country, and a burning determination that had kept her training through 2 years of preparation. Her grandfather had stormed the beaches of Normandy. Her father had served 2 tours in Vietnam. And now, at 19 years old, with perfect test scores and a record-breaking fitness evaluation, she was ready to continue that legacy. What she didn't expect was Colonel James Harrison. Harrison sat behind the interview panel, like a man carved from stone. Gray hair buzzed to regulation length, medals arranged in perfect rows across his chest, eyes that seemed to weigh and measure everyone who entered his presence. He had built his reputation on producing the finest officers in the Army, and he took pride in his ability to spot weakness before it could infect his institution. Nova entered the sterile conference room with confidence, her uniform pressed to perfection, her posture rigid with military bearing she had practiced since childhood. The other panel members seemed impressed by her file. Captain Rodriguez nodded approvingly at her test scores. Major Williams raised an eyebrow at her physical fitness marks. But Harrison's expression never changed. "Miss Chen," he began, his voice carrying the authority of 30 years in uniform, "I've reviewed your application. Impressive numbers on paper. But numbers don't make soldiers." Nova straightened. "Yes, sir. I understand, sir." "Do you?" Harrison leaned forward, his gaze never leaving her face. "Because looking at you, I see someone who's never faced real adversity. Someone who's had everything handed to her. Perfect scores, perfect fitness tests, perfect little life. But when the bullets start flying, when your men die around you, perfect doesn't matter. Character does. And I don't see it in you." The words hit Nova like physical blows. She felt her carefully maintained composure crack, but she fought to keep her voice steady. "Sir, with respect, my family has served this country for 3 generations. My grandfather—" "Your grandfather's service doesn't qualify you for anything." Harrison cut her off. "Neither does your father's. This is about you. And you, Miss Chen, are not soldier material." The silence in the room was deafening. Captain Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. Major Williams looked down at his notes. But Harrison continued, his voice growing colder. "You're soft, privileged. You've never known real hardship, real failure, real loss. The Academy doesn't need another pretty face who thinks a famous last name and good test scores make her special. We need warriors. And frankly, I don't think you have what it takes to protect the soldiers who would serve under you." Nova felt tears threatening to spill, but she held them back through sheer force of will. "Sir, I respectfully disagree. Given the opportunity—" "The opportunity is denied," Harrison said flatly. "Application rejected. You're dismissed." That night, in a cheap motel room 50 miles from West Point, Nova Chen cried harder than she had since she was a child. But somewhere between the tears and the darkness, something harder began to form. Not just disappointment, but determination. Not just hurt, but hunger. Harrison had called her soft, privileged, unworthy. He had dismissed her family's legacy and questioned her character. She would prove him wrong. 2 days later, Nova walked into a Marine Corps recruiting station. The recruiter, Staff Sergeant Martinez, looked up from his paperwork as she approached his desk. "I want to enlist," she said simply. Martinez studied her for a moment. There was something in her eyes, something cold and focused that made him sit up straighter. "You sure about this, miss?" "Done. And yes, I'm sure. I want infantry. I want to go where the fighting is. Most people your age with your education, They go officer route. Why enlisted? Nova's voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. Because I want to earn it. Every stripe, every rank, every bit of respect. I want to prove I belong there. Martinez nodded slowly. Fair enough. When do you want to ship out? Tomorrow, if possible. The transformation began immediately. Boot camp at Paris Island was designed to break civilians and rebuild them as Marines. For most recruits, it was the hardest thing they had ever endured. For Nova, it was redemption. Every push-up, every mile run, every drill instructor's scream was fuel for the fire that Harrison had lit. She graduated at the top of her class and volunteered immediately for advanced infantry training, then airborne school, then ranger training. Each course was more demanding than the last, each designed to weed out all but the most dedicated and capable. Nova not only survived them all, she excelled. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. After 2 years of service, Nova applied for and was accepted into the most elite training program the military offered. A joint special operations corps so classified that its very existence was known only to a handful of senior officers. The selection process had a 90% failure rate. Of the few who made it through, even fewer were chosen for operational deployment. Nova was among them. For the next 8 years, she operated in shadows that most soldiers never knew existed. Hostage rescues in forgotten corners of the world. Counterterrorism operations that never made the news. Missions so sensitive that their success or failure could shift the balance of international politics. She led teams of the most elite operators from every branch of the military, earning their respect through competence, courage, and an unwavering commitment to bringing everyone home alive. Her call sign became legend in certain circles, Phoenix, because she had a talent for rising from impossible situations and bringing her team with her. But Colonel Harrison knew none of this. To him, Nova Chen was just another rejected applicant, forgotten in the mountain of files that had crossed his desk over the years. He had moved on to bigger responsibilities, eventually taking command of an elite army unit tasked with high-risk operations in volatile regions around the world, which is how he found himself, 10 years after that interview, pinned down by enemy fire in a compound in eastern Syria. The mission had started as routine reconnaissance. Intelligence suggested that a high-value terrorist target was using the compound as a staging area for attacks on coalition forces. Harrison's team was supposed to observe, confirm, and call in an airstrike. Simple, clean, safe. But intelligence was wrong. Instead of a small cell, they had walked into a heavily fortified stronghold. Instead of a dozen militants, they faced over 50. Instead of an easy extraction, they were trapped with limited ammunition, no air support, and enemy reinforcements closing in from all sides. Harrison pressed himself against the crumbling concrete wall, listening to the steady crack of rifle fire and the occasional whistle of incoming mortars. His radio crackled with increasingly desperate reports from his squad leaders. Alpha Team, report. He barked into his mic. Pinned down, sir. Rodriguez is hit bad. We're running low on ammo. Bravo Team. Same here, Colonel. Lost Williams an hour ago. Can't move without getting cut down. Harrison closed his eyes. 23 years of military service, and this is how it would end. Trapped in a foreign desert, watching his soldiers die one by one while he waited for enemy reinforcements to finish them off. He had called for extraction, but command had made it clear. No assets were available. His team was on their own. That's when his radio crackled with a new voice. Female, calm, professional. Broken Arrow 6, this is Phoenix Actual. We're inbound for immediate extraction. Mark your position and prepare for close air support. Harrison stared at his radio. Phoenix Actual? He had heard that call sign before, whispered in the corridors of the Pentagon among the few who knew about the most classified operations. The leader of a ghost team that officially didn't exist, operating under the deepest black authorizations. Phoenix Actual, this is Broken Arrow 6, Harrison replied, his voice tight with disbelief. How did you? Details later, Colonel. Right now, my job is to get you and your team home alive. I need you to mark your position with green smoke and have your people ready to move on my signal. Harrison hesitated. Phoenix, our position is heavily compromised. multiple hostiles, fortified positions. This is a suicide run. There was a pause on the radio. When the voice came back, there was something in it that made Harrison's blood run cold. Not fear, but recognition, as if she knew exactly who she was talking to. Colonel Harrison, the voice said slowly, I don't leave soldiers behind. No matter what. The emphasis on no matter what sent a chill down Harrison's spine. There was something familiar about that voice, something that tugged at a memory he couldn't quite place. Roger, Phoenix. Green smoke going out now. Harrison pulled the pin on a smoke grenade and tossed it into the courtyard. Thick green smoke began billowing upward, marking their position for extraction, but it also marked them for every enemy fighter in the area. All teams, prepare for immediate extraction, Harrison ordered. Phoenix team inbound. That's when he heard it. The distinctive whine of helicopter rotors, growing louder by the second. But not just one helicopter. Multiple aircraft, approaching fast and low. The first Apache gunship swept over the compound like an angel of death, its 30mm cannon laying down a devastating field of fire that sent enemy fighters diving for cover. A second Apache followed, targeting the mortar positions that had been raining death on Harrison's team. And behind them, flying impossibly low and fast, came a Black Hawk with no markings, no identification. Nothing to indicate which unit belonged to. The Black Hawk flared hard, its skids barely touching the ground in the center of the courtyard. The side door slid open and Harrison saw them. 6 operators in full tactical gear. Faces hidden behind advanced night vision goggles and communications equipment. They moved with the fluid precision of a team that had trained together for years, covering each other's movements as they established a defensive perimeter around the helicopter. But it was a 7th figure that made Harrison's breath catch in his throat. She stepped out of the Black Hawk like she owned the battlefield. Medium height, athletic build, moving with the confident grace of someone who had spent years in combat zones. Her tactical gear was different from the others, more advanced, marked with subdued patches that Harrison couldn't make out in the smoke and chaos. But when she turned toward his position, when their eyes met across the courtyard, Harrison felt the world tilt on its axis. He knew that face. Older now, harder, marked by years of combat and command. But unmistakably the same face that had sat across from him in that interview room 10 years ago. Nova Chen. Broken Arrow 6, this is Phoenix. Her voice came through his radio, but now he could see her lips moving as she spoke. I need your teams to move to the LZ immediately. We have approximately 90 seconds before enemy reinforcement arrive. Harrison stared at her, unable to move, unable to process what he was seeing. The young woman he had rejected, dismissed as soft and unworthy, was now standing in the middle of combat zone, calmly directing the extraction of his team while enemy fire erupted around her. Sir, Sergeant Peterson, his radio operator, was looking at him with concern. Orders, sir? Harrison shook himself back to reality. Personal recognition would have to wait. Right now, his soldiers' lives depended on following Phoenix's lead. All teams move to the LZ now, he ordered. Covering fire. His soldiers responded with disciplined efficiency, laying down suppressing fire, while moving in tactical bounds toward the helicopter. Nova's team provided expert overwatch, their advanced weapon systems, keeping enemy heads down while the extraction proceeded. Harrison was the last to reach the helicopter, diving through the door as Nova's operator laid down covering fire behind him. As soon as he was aboard, Nova spoke into her mic. Phoenix team aboard. Lift off, lift off, lift off. The Black Hawk rose into the air with stomach-churning speed, banking hard to avoid incoming fire. Through the door, Harrison could see the compound shrinking below them, enemy muzzle flashes like angry fireflies in the darkness. It wasn't until they were clear of the immediate danger zone that Nova finally turned to face him directly. She pulled off her helmet, shaking out hair that was longer than regulation allowed, but still tied back in a tight tactical bun. Her face was calm, professional, showing no emotion despite the fact that she had just risked her life and the lives of her team to save the man who had crushed her dreams 10 years earlier. Colonel Harrison, she said simply, offering a slight nod. Good to see you again. Harrison stared at her, searching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, he managed to speak. Nova, how? What are you doing here? Her smile was cold, not cruel, but completely professional. My job, Colonel. I lead a joint special operations unit. When we received word that American soldiers were trapped behind enemy lines, we responded. It's what we do. But how did I become qualified to lead elite soldiers? Nova interrupted, her voice still perfectly controlled. I enlisted. I trained. I proved myself in combat, mission after mission, year after year. I earned every rank, every qualification, every bit of respect that my team gives me. Harrison felt shame burning in his chest. Nova, about what I said that day. Colonel, she cut him off again. With respect, this is neither the time nor the place for personal conversations. Right now, my priority is getting your wounded to medical attention and ensuring your safe return to base. She turned away, speaking into her headset to coordinate with the medical team that will be waiting for them. Harrison sat in silence for the rest of the flight, watching Nova work with her team. The way they looked at her, the way they responded to her orders, made it clear that their respect wasn't given lightly. They trusted her with their lives because she had proven, again and again, that she was worthy of that trust. The Black Hawk touched down at the forward operating base 20 minutes later. Medical personnel rushed to treat Harrison's wounded soldiers, while Nova's team efficiently prepared for immediate departure. She was walking toward the helicopter when Harrison called out to her. Nova, wait. She paused, turning back to face him. In the harsh light of the base's floodlights, Harrison could see the scars that marked her face and hands. Evidence of battles fought and won, of prices paid in blood and sacrifice. I owe you an apology, Harrison began, his voice heavy with the weight of 10 years of regret. What I said to you that day, the way I treated you, I was wrong. Nova studied his face for a long moment before responding. You said I was soft, Colonel, that I was privileged, that I'd never known real hardship or loss, that I wasn't soldier material. Harrison nodded, unable to meet her eyes. I was wrong about all of it. Were you? Nova's voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. Because you were right about one thing. That day, I hadn't known real hardship. I hadn't been tested. I was privileged in my way. Privileged to have a family that supported me. Privileged to have advantages that not everyone gets. She stepped closer, and Harrison forced himself to look at her. But you were wrong about what that meant, Nova continued. You assumed that privilege made me weak. You never considered that it might make me grateful, or determined, or willing to work twice as hard to prove I belonged. You looked at me and saw what you expected to see, not what was actually there. Harrison felt the truth of her words like a physical blow. You're right. I let my prejudices cloud my judgment. Yes, you did. And because of that, the Academy lost a good officer, and I spent 10 years taking a much harder path to get where I was always meant to be. Nova turned to leave again, but Harrison called out once more. Nova, for what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've accomplished. You've become everything I said you couldn't be, and more. She paused at the helicopter door, looking back at him one final time. Colonel, I didn't become these things to prove you wrong. I became them to prove to myself that I was right. About who I was, about what I was capable of, about what I owed to the soldiers who would serve under me. The helicopter engines began to spin up, drowning out further conversation. Nova climbed aboard and secured her helmet. As the Black Hawk lifted off, Harrison watched it disappear into the night sky, carrying the woman who had just saved his life and taught him a lesson about judgment and character that he would never forget. 3 months later, Colonel Harrison received an official commendation from the Department of Defense. The citation was classified, but it acknowledged his exceptional leadership under combat conditions during the Syria operation. What it didn't mention was that his leadership had consisted primarily of staying alive long enough for Phoenix Team to extract his unit from a disaster of his own making. The real commendation, the one that mattered, went to Major Nova Chen, though her citation was so heavily redacted that it revealed almost nothing about what she had actually done. In the world of special operations, true heroes often went unrecognized by the public, their actions known only to the soldiers whose lives they had saved and commanders who sent them into harm's way. But Harrison knew, And late at night, when he reviewed the after-action reports from Syria, he thought about the 19-year-old woman who had sat across from him in that interview room, and the warrior she had become despite his attempts to crush her dreams. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening. Harrison was in his office, finishing paperwork, when his secretary informed him that Major Chen was on line 2. "Nova," he said as he picked up the phone. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Good evening, Colonel. I wanted to inform you personally that I've accepted a promotion to Lieutenant Colonel and command of a new Joint Special Operations Unit. We're being tasked with training and advising foreign military units in counterterrorism operations." Harrison felt a surge of something that might have been pride. "Congratulations. You've earned it." "Thank you, sir. There's something else. I've been asked to recommend candidates for a new military academy liaison program. Officers who can help identify and develop the next generation of special operations leaders." Harrison was quiet for a moment, sensing there was more to this conversation. "I'd like to recommend you for position," Nova continued. "Your experience and judgment will be valuable in helping young officers find their path." The irony wasn't lost on Harrison. The woman he had rejected was now offering him an opportunity to help shape the careers of future soldiers. "Nova, I appreciate the recommendation, but given our history—" "Colonel," Nova interrupted, "that history is exactly why I'm recommending you. You made a mistake 10 years ago, but you recognized it, you acknowledged it, and you learned from it. That kind of growth, that kind of honesty about our own failures, that's what we need in people who can guide the next generation." Harrison felt his throat tighten. "You're giving me a chance to make amends. I'm giving you a chance to do better. For the next kid who walks into an interview room carrying dreams and determination. The next young person who needs someone to see their potential instead of their perceived weaknesses." Harrison was quiet for a long moment, thinking about all the interviews he had conducted over the years, all the snap judgments he had made, all the potential he might have missed because he was looking for reasons to say no instead of reasons to say yes. "I accept," he said finally. "And Nova, thank you for saving my soldiers, for this opportunity, and for being a better person than I was. We all have the capacity to be better, Colonel. The question is whether we're willing to do the work." After Nova hung up, Harrison sat in his office for a long time, staring at the photographs on his wall. Pictures of units he had commanded, ceremonies he had attended, a career built on service and sacrifice. But none of those images capture the most important lesson he had learned. That strength comes in many forms, and the greatest leaders are often those who have been underestimated, rejected, and forced to prove themselves against impossible odds. What Harrison didn't know was that their story was far from over. 3 days after that phone call, a classified briefing would land on his desk that would change everything he thought he knew about Nova Chen's operations. The Syria rescue wasn't just a routine extraction. It was part of something much larger, much more dangerous, and much more personal than he could have ever imagined. The briefing folder was marked with the highest security classifications. Inside, satellite photographs showed a network of terrorist training camps spread across 3 countries. Intelligence reports detailed plans for coordinated attacks on American military installations worldwide. And at the center of it all was a name that made Harrison's blood run cold. Captain Rashid al-Mansouri, the terrorist leader who had orchestrated the ambush that nearly killed Harrison's team in Syria. But there was more, much more. Al-Mansouri hadn't just been targeting random American units. He had been specifically hunting for Colonel James Harrison, the man who had killed his brother in a drone strike 5 years earlier. The Syria operation had been a trap from the beginning, designed to lure Harrison into an ambush where al-Mansouri could personally execute the man he blamed for his family's loss. And Nova had known. The intelligence files made it clear that Phoenix team had been tracking al-Mansouri's movements for months, knowing that he was building towards something big. When they learned about the planned ambush, Nova had made a choice that defied every tactical doctrine she had ever learned. She had voluntarily walked into a trap to save a man who had once destroyed her dreams. The mission reports were unlike anything Harrison had ever read. Nova's team hadn't just executed a rescue operation. They had systematically dismantled al-Mansouri's entire network over the course of 6 months. Camp by camp, Cell by cell, they had eliminated one of the most dangerous terrorist organizations operating in the Middle East. But the final entry in the file made Harrison's hands shake as he read it. 3 weeks after the Syria rescue, Nova had led a direct assault on al-Mansouri's primary stronghold. The operation was so dangerous that conventional military doctrine would have required an entire battalion. Nova had done it with 6 operators in a plan so audacious that it bordered on insanity. She had walked into al-Mansouri's compound alone, posing as a captured American officer. While her team provided overwatch from a distance, she had allowed herself to be brought before the terrorist leader, knowing that one mistake would mean not just her death, but a continuation of his campaign against American forces. The classified audio recording of their final confrontation was attached to the file. Harrison listened to it with growing amazement and horror. "So you are the famous Phoenix." Al-Mansouri's voice crackled through the speakers. "The ghost who has been hunting my people." "Your people were hunting mine," Nova replied, her voice calm despite the circumstances. "That makes it my business. You Americans, always so arrogant. You think you can waltz into our lands and kill whomever you please without consequences. I think," Nova said quietly, "that when you target American soldiers, you make yourself a target. When you plan to execute prisoners of war, you forfeit any claim to mercy. And when you threaten the lives of people under my protection, you seal your own fate." There was a long pause on the recording. Then al-Mansouri's voice tinged with confusion. "You speak as if this Harrison means something to you, but my intelligence says he is no friend of yours. In fact, quite the opposite." Nova's laugh was cold, almost pitying. "You've made the same mistake that many people make about me, Rashid. You confuse personal feelings with professional duty. Colonel Harrison, and I have history, yes, but he's an American soldier, and that makes him my responsibility. Your vendetta against him ends tonight." The rest of the recording was too classified for Harrison to hear, but the mission report made the outcome clear. Al-Mansouri was dead, his network destroyed, and Nova's team had extracted without a single casualty. But the most shocking revelation came in the final addendum to file. Nova's mission in Syria hadn't been officially sanctioned. She had gone rogue, taking her entire team off the grid to rescue Harrison and his soldiers. By all rights, she should have been court-martialed. Instead, the Pentagon had quietly awarded her the Medal of Honor, though the ceremony would never be public and the citation would remain classified for 50 years. Harrison closed the file and sat in stunned silence. Nova hadn't just saved his life. She had sacrificed her career, risked her team, and violated every regulation in the book to do it. Not for personal reasons, but because she believed that no American soldier should be abandoned, regardless of their history. 2 weeks later, Harrison was invited to a private ceremony at the Pentagon. He wasn't told why, only that his presence was requested in conference room Delta 7, one of the most secure briefings rooms in the building. When he arrived, he found himself in a room with some of the most senior military leaders in the country. The Secretary of Defense was there, along with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the commanders of all major special operations units. At the center of the room stood Nova, wearing dress blues with ribbons and decorations that Harrison had never seen before. The Secretary of Defense stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to witness something unprecedented in the history of American Special Operations. Lieutenant Colonel Nova Chen has been selected to command the newly formed Joint Special Operations Task Force, a unit that will coordinate the most sensitive and dangerous missions across all branches of the military." Harrison felt his breath catch. The Joint Task Force was legendary, spoken of only in whispers among the highest levels of command. It was the military's most elite unit, tasked with operations so classified that their very existence was denied by official sources. Lieutenant Colonel Chen's selection for this position is based not only on her exceptional tactical skills and leadership abilities, the Secretary continued, but on her demonstrated commitment to the values that define our military: courage, honor, and the absolute refusal to leave fellow soldiers behind. Nova stepped forward to accept the ceremonial command flag, and for just a moment, her eyes met Harrison's across the room. In that instant, Harrison saw not the young woman he had rejected 10 years earlier, but the warrior she had become, someone who had taken every doubt, every insult, every obstacle he had placed in her path and transformed him into the fuel that had driven her to heights he could never have imagined. After the ceremony, as the senior officers filed out of the room, Nova approached Harrison. She was no longer the desperate 19-year-old seeking approval, nor the cold professional who had extracted him from Syria. She was something else entirely. A leader who had found her true calling and the strength to pursue it regardless of the cost. "Congratulations," Harrison said, and meant it. "I heard about the Medal of Honor. Even if the public never knows about it, I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've accomplished." Nova nodded, then surprised him by extending her hand. "Colonel, I want to offer you something. My task force will need experienced officers to help train and evaluate candidates. People who understand that true strength isn't always obvious, that potential can be hidden beneath the surface. The position comes with promotion to Brigadier General and oversight of our personnel development program." Harrison stared at her, hardly believing what he was hearing. "Nova, I don't deserve." "This isn't about what you deserve," she interrupted gently. "It's about what the military needs. We need officers who have learned from their mistakes, who understand the cost of prejudice and the value of giving people second chances. Your experience, both your successes and your failures, makes you uniquely qualified to help identify the next generation of special operations leaders." Harrison felt tears threatening to spill. "You're offering me the chance to make amends. I'm offering you the chance to be part of something important, to help ensure that the next kid who walks into an interview room gets judged on their potential, not their appearance or background or anything else that doesn't matter." Harrison took her hand, feeling the calluses and scars that told the story of her journey from rejected applicant to legendary operator. "Yes," he said simply. "Yes, I'll do it." Nova smiled, and for the first time since he had known her, it was completely genuine. "Welcome to the team, General Harrison." 5 years later, the Harrison Chen Personnel Development Program had become the gold standard for identifying and training special operations candidates. Under their joint leadership, the program had discovered and developed some of the most exceptional military leaders of their generation, with a particular focus on finding potential in unexpected places. The program's motto, inscribed on a plaque in the training center, captured the philosophy that had emerged from their unlikely partnership. Strength is not determined by first impressions, but by final actions. But perhaps the most telling testament to their success was a letter that arrived on Harrison's desk on the 5th anniversary of the program's founding. It was from a young Marine named Rodriguez, one of their first graduates, who had just been selected for his own Special Operations Command. "General Harrison," the letter read, "I wanted to thank you for seeing something in me that I didn't even see in myself. When I walked into that interview room 3 years ago, I was just another poor kid from the inner city who barely made it through high school. But you and Colonel Chen looked past my background and saw my potential. Today, I'm leading a team of some of the finest warriors I've ever known, and I know that none of it would have been possible without the chance you gave me. I promise to pass that gift forward to the next generation of soldiers who need someone to believe in them." Harrison shared the letter with Nova over coffee that afternoon, in the small break room adjacent to their offices. She read it in silence, then looked up at him with the same smile she had worn at the Pentagon ceremony 5 years earlier. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "what would have happened if you had accepted my application that day?" Harrison considered the question seriously. "I think," he said finally, "that you would have become a fine officer through the traditional route, but you never would have become the leader you are today. The rejection, the struggle, the years of proving yourself, they forge you into something that the Academy never could have." Nova nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe that's the real lesson here. Sometimes the things that seem like setbacks are actually setups for something greater. Sometimes the people who reject us are doing us a favor, even if they don't know it at the time. And sometimes," Harrison added, "the people we reject come back to save our lives in ways we never could have imagined." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, two former adversaries who had become partners in a mission larger than either of them had originally envisioned. Outside their window, a new class of special operations candidates was running training exercises, learning not just how to fight, but how to lead, how to inspire, and how to see potential where others saw only problems. In the years that followed, the story of Nova Chen and James Harrison would become legend within special operations circles. Not just a tale of a rejected applicant who prove her worth, but the deeper story of how redemption works, how growth happens, and how the greatest leaders are often forged in the fires of adversity and shaped by the wisdom that comes from learning to see beyond surface judgments. But perhaps most importantly, it became a reminder that in a world where first impressions often determine outcomes, the greatest service we can provide is to look deeper, to give second chances, and to remember that today's rejected applicant might be tomorrow's hero. Because sometimes the person you underestimate is the one who ends up changing not just their own life, but yours as well. And in doing so, they change the world one saved life at a time.